We are moving on to target 3C, which is graphing inequalities within two variables. So the main important thing here is that we remember how to get the equation of a line. It's very important that we know and understand how to get the slope and the y-intercept. So we're going to practice with these two warm-up problems, okay? All they want us to do is write the equation. And again, I need to find my the equation is going to be y equals mx plus b. Don't forget that I need a number, a number for m and a number for b. M is your slope, B is your starting point. So once again, once you have your line, don't forget that we read the lines from left to right. So from left to right, that means that this is the left side and this is the right side. We're going up. So if you're going up, that means that this is your first point and this is your second point, okay? Once you have that figured out, remember every coordinate point has an x and a y, and because this is your first point, this is x1, y1. This also has an x and a y, and because it's your second point is x2, y2. In case you forgot, the equation of a slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So all I'm going to do is plug in my numbers. So y2 I notice is right here, so it's 0 minus my y1, which is right here, and it's a -7. So make sure that every number negative, we put them in parentheses. x2 is 4 minus x1, which is 0. 0 minus -7 gives me +7, and 4 minus 0 gives me +4. I cannot divide 7 over 4, so that's my slope. This is my slope. So I'm going to plug it in for m. So far I have y equals 7 over 4x, and I need to figure out my b, which is my starting point. Don't forget that b is the starting point when x equals 0 or where the line is crossing through the y. This is your y. Where is the point crossing? At this point right here. And what is that coordinate point? 0 and -7. X is 0, so your y, which is your starting point, has to be -7. So in this case, it's going to be -7. Okay? Or you can write plus, because I know we've been writing plus, -7. Make sure you put that negative in parentheses though, okay? So you can either write either or, it doesn't matter. You can write it with 7 over 4x minus 7, or you can write with a positive, but make sure you put that negative in parentheses, okay? Both answers are correct. So there you go. I did the equation of a line. That's the equation for this line. Make sure you try the next problem so you can get some practice before we actually move on to graphing inequalities. All right. When we are graphing inequalities, there's 3 steps that you need to figure out. As you've seen, we practice how to get the slope and the y-intercept, because the first step is that you need to find the y-intercept and slope. Okay, to write those inequalities, we need to find the y-intercept slope. So it's going to be the same thing as we did for the warm-up. We're going to have to write that equation, but the difference is that instead of writing an equal sign, how we've been doing, we're going to have to be writing those inequality signs. And it's really easy, okay? How do you figure out your options? Where the second step? Figure out the type of line you have. So figure out the type of line that you have. Figure out the type of line. All right, so you're going to have a solid line. Okay, and again, solid means that it's just going to be like this, just a solid line. Okay, just how we've been looking at lines over the past, I don't know how many weeks now. You know it's going to be a solid line when the inequality symbol is going to be greater than or equal to or less than or equal to. One thing that I tell students to remember is that solid means a line that is just a line, right? That means that we have the equal sign on the bottom. And really common sense, when we've been doing equations, look at those lines. Those lines are called solid lines. They're just lines, okay? What do we have? An equal sign. So the same thing for the inequalities. You have an equal on the bottom from greater than and less than. That's how you know it's solid. The other one is going to be dotted. And those lines are just lines like this. There's a space in between them. Those are called dotted lines. And really easy, those are going to be the greater than or less than symbols, okay? Because when we're writing those inequalities, we need to figure out what symbol I'm going to be using. And the next step, you need to figure out, figure out what sign is it going to be, greater than or less than. Figure out the shading, because we're going to see graphs that are going to be shaded now. Really easy when you're shading up, okay? And let me fix that. Figure out the shading by using your y-intercept. Very important. So when you shade up, that means that your signs are greater. Okay? Remember, greater means when the sign has a mouth open pointing to the greater side. That's how you know that's greater. Okay? So those are your greater signs. Then you're also going to be shading down. And those are less than. Okay? And again, less means when your little point is facing that way, so it's less. So greater is when the mouth is open, okay, and less is when the mouth is facing the other way, okay. So very, very important that you understand that. Okay, so we're gonna do question 2a. Well, I'm gonna do the 2a with you, and then you're gonna try 2b on your own. Okay, so we need to determine the linear inequality that represents the graph below. Well, in order for me to do that, it's like we did before, y equals mx plus b. However, remember, we're not using this equal sign anymore. We're going to have to figure out what inequality sign we're going to use. So we're going to figure out that in the second step. For right now, I need to figure out my m and my b. Again, my m is my slope, b is the starting point. Let's figure out b first, because I think the b, which is your starting point, is always the easiest. This is your y line, and we need to see where is the line crossing through the y. Well, I notice it's crossing right here, and again, it's 0, x is 0, and your y is -6. That means that this is -6. Your slope, to find the slope, remember, we need to use those two points they gave us. They gave us these 2 points. Make sure you figure out which one is the first one and the second. Very, very important. If you mess those up, you will mess up your results and your answers will be wrong. So again, from left to right, this is the first point, this is the second point. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, y2 is -6, and remember, we put them in parentheses, minus y1 is 0, over x2. x2 is 0 minus x1, which is -3. And every number that I'm putting in parentheses, make sure you put them in, any negative, we put them in parentheses. -6 minus 0 gives me -6. 0 minus -3 gives me +3. And -6 divided by 3 gives me -2. So then your m will be -2. That will be your slope. Okay, once again, we're not writing the equal sign. What we need to figure out is the inequality sign. So let's go back to my steps here. Step 2, since I already figured out the y-intercept and the slope, step 2 says figure out the type of line. So the type of line I see is a solid, it's not dotted. Okay, there's no spaces cutting in between the line. It's just a solid line. Therefore, my only options is greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. Which one is it going to be? Well, let's figure out the next step. Step number 3. Figure out the shading by using the y-intercept. Y-intercept is the number for B, the starting point. That right here is this one. This is a starting point. We already discussed this. From here, I'm just going to make a straight line, okay? From this straight line, obviously, I know that if I go up, okay? And I go down. From the shading, which part is it being shaded? The arrow that's going down or the one that's going up? Well, you should notice that it's shading right here, which is going down. That means that this graph right here, this inequality, means that it's going to be less than or equal to. Why? Because it's shading down, so less than or equal to. And that's how we figure out the inequality for this graph, okay? You can go ahead and try 2B, okay? And make sure you try it. Check your work with me if you need to. If you're still confused, make sure you ask questions. Let me give you a hint. For this line, I see the line is dotted, so your only two options going to be greater than or less than. Okay, figure out if it's going to be shading up or down. Okay, don't forget you need to find the slope. They didn't give you coordinate points, but let me help you out. Use these 2 points to find your slope. And I'll give you a hint. This right here is 2 and 0. And this right here is 0 and 4. All right, try 2B then.